on time there, so it has. So we're recording, Damien, yeah, so all good to go. So, okay, you're all welcome to the May Policy and Resources Committee meeting. This is the last PNR meeting before the Council AGM next month. So I suppose I just want to just say a quick word on the year gone by, and we all can say it's been a very challenging year for our council and for our constituents and for our staff. However, I think we responded as a council to these challenges, and a lot of very good work has been done on behalf of those who live in the district. I want to just thank Alison here and Celine and our Democratic Services team for helping me run these meetings, and without them, obviously, we'd been under a bit of pressure, so thanks to them. And also, I just want to acknowledge our wider staff who have kept ourselves going during the worst of the pandemic and made sure that we could deliver the services that we're meant to deliver on behalf of our constituents. So I just want to acknowledge them again. We spoke about them several times during the year, but I just want to acknowledge our staff as we approach the council AGM. So with that said, and obviously members, I want to thank yourselves too, because we've got through business and PNR, every month we've got business done, and with your cooperation that was only possible. So thanks to you all. So with them few words said, we'll kick off the agenda proper, and I'll take any apologies, starting with the Sinn Féin Group Leader, Councillor Michael Duff.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Gormagat, Stephen, and congratulations on your successful year as Cahirlock of the PNR Committee. You have excellent chairing skills. You demonstrated them throughout, so well done. And I think McCann deserves a rest, that's my own personal opinion. But my apologies this evening. Councillor Siobhan Curry, I think, won't be able to make the meeting even before it ends, but I'm not sure about that, but I'll record apologies now for Councillor Curry.
Okay, Gormagat, bye. Councillor Warrington.
No apologies from our group, and apart from Councillor Rainey has to leave early. Thank you. Can't hear you, Stephen.
No sound from you, Stephen.
That makes 3 hours, no sound.
What about now?
Yeah, I hear you now.
If
Okay.
If it had been Bernice would have lived with it. I'm not told her. But...
You go and pick on someone your own size, Victor, right?
Apologies about that, members. Okay, so Councillor Warrington there, I just didn't get your apologies from the Ulster Unionist Party.
Right, no apologies apart from Councillor Rainey has to leave early.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Garrity?
Thank you very much, Chair. No apologies from ourselves. And like Councillor Michael Duff said, and as someone we both, Barry and I know, would say, I hear you, Barry. Councillor McCann can do the rest. So, and I think it's very apt, Stephen, that you thank all the officers, and my duty for that. Thank you.
Okay, Gormagat Mary, thank you.
Sorry, Stephen, can I just come back in again there? Sorry, I admitted saying well done on your year in chair, and I think we have that chair next year, so hopefully it goes smoothly. Thank you. It didn't go smooth sometimes, but anyway. Okay.
Thanks, Victor. Thank you. Okay, and Councillor, where am I now? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman. No apologies from the DUP this evening. Can I just take this opportunity to thank you and congratulate you on your year in office. I know we've had our differences, and that remains to be seen, but you don't, all in all, it was a good year in office. So I wish you well for the future. Thank you, Chair.
Good morning. Thank you. Thanks for that. Have we any other apologies, members?
No apologies, Stephen, but I would just like to say to you also, Moihu, for a very different type of year we've had, without a doubt, and you've managed to hold the reins very well, and it was all done with a bit of crack and lightheartedness as well. So, and you quite rightly acknowledged the officers too, so well done, and I hope you enjoy a little semi-retirement.
Thanks, Bernice. Thank you. Councillor Coffey.
I have an apology from Councillor Keenan there. He's working today.
Okay, thank you, Donald. So that's Councillor Keenan. And Councillor Deehan.
Well, thank you, Chair, and I too would like to thank you for your hard work during the year, to congratulate you on getting the business getting through the business, often racing against the clock, but conducting the business very effectively and efficiently. So well done and thank you.
Thank you, Josephine. Councillor Irving.
Thanks, Stephen. I think Councillor Wilson may have problems getting in again. I just noticed. I know Victor said no apologies, but I think he has problems, so we may need to note him down. Thank you.
Okay. Does he need someone to touch base with him, do you think?
Yeah,
Robert?
I think so. Wouldn't do any harm. Yep, thanks.
Okay. We can get that sorted out. Okay, members, thank you. So item 2 is to sign the minutes of the confidential minutes of the previous meeting, which we have done. Any declarations of interest? No declarations of interest. Item 4, matters arising, members. I'm going to just move matters arising to just before section 8 of the meeting AOB with your cooperation. So that'll take us into section 5 of the meeting. That's the Chief Executive Director reports, and I'll hand over to Alison, who'll take us through 5.1, which is in relation to the governance review, paper A.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, just really a couple of matters to highlight to members. Firstly, appended to the report is a copy of the presentation from Councillor Stockin for the facilitated workshop that he undertook in April, together with an outcome note of that workshop. And then summarised in the report, Chair, are a number of matters that have been discussed in the context of the work that has been undertaken in terms of the governance review, and some of which were also touched on by Councillor Stockin. So the recommendations, Chair, are that the Council would note the update report in relation to the governance review. Members will be aware that we have, the Council had delegated powers to each of the standing committees on a trial period up to May of this year. It would certainly be our view that that has worked effectively, and we'd be recommending that that would continue until May of next year. And we've also set out in the report proposals regarding the restructuring of committee agendas. That would be to remove matters arising, which is not a part of the decision-making process, and also to reflect items which would be for decision and for information. And if members were content with that approach, we would implement that from June of this year, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Alison. Go away, Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for the report. It's an interesting one, but in relation to the recommendations made, I would have one change that I would like to make, and I'll be proposing it now. Just, I think it's important that any decisions based on the committees and the standing committees are on the proviso that the committees remain full 40-member committees, and I think that seems to be noted within the report here. But I do think in relation to the proposal to remove matters arising, I would be inclined to keep that in. I think it's an important and useful aspect of discussion and debate, and I would argue that it should be maintained. So I would be proposing that we amend the recommendations at number 3 and remove the section where it says to remove matters arising, so that we would approve the restructuring of committee agendas and reflect items for decision and for information with effect from June 2021, but that we would keep matters arising as part of that. And I think it is very useful to debate. It may leave us tight for times on the odd night, but we've seen last night and hopefully again tonight we'll get through the matters of business. But I think it's very important that we focus on quality and not quantity. It's important that we do get a chance to discuss and address matters that are raised as part of the agenda and the minutes of the meetings. And just then finally, in relation to 2.9, it's just a wee, I think there's a word missing from it, just the third line down there then may need to be supplemented, I presume that is. But so my proposal is just that we take the recommendations apart from point 3 and we include the matters arising at meetings going forward. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Damien, can you just check with Councillor Feely as well? I believe he's having problems getting in, if you can. Okay, thanks, Emmett. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Alison, for the report. I know a lot of hard work has went into this over a period of time. I hear what Councillor McAleer has said, but I think that I'm prepared to propose that the three parts of the recommendation it should make it more streamlined, and we'll see how that goes, but it should make it more streamlined when you break it down for decision and for information. So I'm happy enough to propose the recommendations, all three as listed. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Thompson. Councillor Coffey.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to second what Councillor McAleer has proposed. I understand the need for streamlined meetings. Obviously, we've had a tough year, every one of us, in terms of remote meetings, and it has been difficult, and I'm sure it's been very difficult for the chairs. But I do believe, if you look even in recent meetings, we are getting through the business, just about, but we have all 40 members, all 40 voices, and I think that's a very important thing to be able to do, and it's a credit actually to us that we've managed to do that over the year, despite all the humps and the hurdles, and that is something that is a positive, and I think it's important, whether I agree or anyone agrees with anyone else's opinion, that we hear them. So I'm very happy to support that element, as Councillor McAleer has raised. In regard to matters arising, I think it is important to have this on the agenda, and I say it for one reason more than any other. I fear that issues are raised at this council, and for whatever reason, time delays, lack of, maybe just so much on the go. Sometimes I fear that some of these issues don't be actioned or actioned in a way that's quickly enough for my liking, and some of these have even come up in recent days. So I think the idea of having matters arising on the agenda, we don't usually spend a huge amount of time on it, certainly anymore. And it is important in terms of picking up issues where maybe they haven't been given the appropriate attention. So I think it is something that I would like to see retained. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Donal. Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I too would like to support Councillor McAleer's proposal that we retain matters arising. I want to thank Alison and her team for all the work that has gone into this governance report, and also to Councillor Armstrong for chairing the workshop. This is an important decision that we have to make. It really will determine how we do our business going forward. But I agree with Councillor O'Coffey that in recent times we have been moving speedily through the agenda, and I think there have been some excellent examples of good chairing of the meetings, whereby the chair will often say, look, people want to come in, but if they have nothing new to add, please take your hands down. And I think that's very reasonable. But matters arising, I think, is an important part of the outworkings of the decisions that we make and the proposals that come forward. And I think it's a good way of re-evaluating an issue in terms of progress made to date and what else, if anything, needs to be done. And we don't spend a huge amount of time on it, Chair, as you will realise. Mostly it's just page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4. Occasionally there are matters which merit further discussion. And I think for the value of just putting in that little bit of extra investment of time, I think it's very worthwhile, and it reassures members that the points they want to make, the actions that they want taken are fully executed. So I would support that. The other question I have, Chair, is that in terms of dividing our business into for information and for decision, is it implied that the for information section therefore will not have any debate arising from those issues? Thank you, Chair.
Alison, do you want to maybe address that point from Councillor Deehan? If you wish, yeah.
Chair, certainly just in terms of the latter query with regard to, no, that wouldn't be the intention, Councillor Deehan. All of the reports would be presented in the usual way, but it would really be to enable the discussion to be prioritised on those matters of decision. I am aware that in some councils, unless there are queries emerging from the for information papers, they are adopted quite routinely. In terms, maybe just to clarify as well, Chair, if I may, on matters arising and some of the points that have been raised, I think it is important to note whatever the decision taken, matters arising actually don't form part of the decision-making process or part of the tracking of actions. That's different again. In terms of the time commitment, it varies considerably, and at our own Policy and Resources Committee last month, matters arising took 57 minutes. So it does vary, and I think it's obviously a matter how members wish to proceed, but it would be incorrect to suggest it actually forms part of either the checking or the decision making. The actions that are undertaken are reported back normally through reports, Chair, or correspondence will come in then in the usual way.
Okay, thank you, Alison. Okay, Councillor Garrity.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks for Alison for that very timely interjection before I speak, because I'm happy to second Councillor Thompson's proposal to adopt the 3 recommendations. And the reasons follow. I take on board what the previous members have said who would like it to be retained, but as Alison said, you know, it's not part of the decision-making process. And it is interesting that the majority of councils do not include matters arising. And I think we all know we're full member committees, and as Donald says, credit to everyone making the effort. That puts awful pressure on people looking after maybe elderly in their family or young in their house, or indeed their own mental health and well-being, being on meetings maybe 4 nights a week, 3 nights or 3 weeks of the month. And in effect, that's really what we find ourselves doing. So I think any way we can succinct our meetings as best possible and make it easier for the chairs. I know most of us would follow up, you know, matters arising with officers, directors directly. That might put more work on them, and that would be, you know, regretful, but you know, that's what they're for and that's what we're here for. So that's just my rationale. I'm happy to accept what the entire chamber or group want to do, but I think this is our chance. You know, looks like we're going to head of full member committees, and if we could have these meetings run as efficiently as possible. And as Alison says, it does vary. 57 minutes for matters arising when we have a 3-hour slot of a meeting. Sometimes it's challenging, but again, what everyone thinks, but our position in our party would be that that the 3 recommendations would be adopted, and I'll second Councillor Thompson's proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Brett. Councillor Erskine.
Chair, I'm going to be very brief because Councillor Garrity there has come in to second Daryl and has said some of the stuff that I was going to add. I mean, for decision for information would be a good way to flag up the decision making, because in some meetings we have spent far too long on papers and correspondence which have been really for information purposes only. I'm just wondering through the chair if Alison could again just clarify that, you know, in terms of matters arising, you know, councillors will still have the opportunity to scrutinise papers coming forward for decision and information purposes. I mean, I think Alison has cleared that up, but just to again put on record, you know, that there is going to still be the opportunity for, should there be matters arising or different things, but not overtly, I suppose, within our order papers as matters arising. Chair, if that could just be clarified again, because I think, you know, it would be useful for members just to hear that again. Thanks, Chair.
Yes, Chair, happy to clarify. I suppose 2 aspects there. All of the reports will be presented, whether they are for decision making or for information and available for scrutiny and for questions as members wish. Decisions which are taken, be that progressing a course of action detailed in a report or a request by the Council to make representations, will also be actioned, and any follow-up action, be it a letter of response or any other associated activity, will be reported back to the relevant committee. The only difference in the context of matters arising is the role of the on the agenda of a formal item for matters arising would be removed, but all of the actions that are actually agreed by the Council at any meeting would be undertaken.
Okay, Deborah. Yep. Councillor Green.
Yeah, Chair. I'm a bit baffled at this. I have been in the council, I think it's 11 years now or that, and matters arising has always, in my opinion, been an extremely important thing. I know Alison explained there the reasons why maybe it doesn't matter, but I think for accountability and if nothing else, it's an extremely important thing because it gives councillors, and they have little time enough to scrutinise on anything, and it gives councillors an added opportunity to go back and look at decisions and query and find out what has been action, what hasn't. All the thing Alison said there was 57 minutes on it, but as far as I know, P&R actually finished last month with out of having to go to a second meeting. So even with the 57 minutes, which probably was an exceptionally long one, we still got finished. I think it's an extremely important part of the council workings. What other councils do is up to them. I believe Fermanagh Council had it. I believe Omagh Council had it. I'm not sure about that, but I know Fermanagh Council had it. I can see no logical reason apart from the time constraints of not having it. And luckily enough, we have got all our business done up until this minute in time. So I don't know why we would consider giving people even less democracy and the view for councillors to be able to hold people to account. And that I just don't know where we're going with this, but I would be in favour of retaining.
Okay, Seamus, thank you. So we have two proposals on the table. Members, I've just asked the next two councillors just to be brief, please. Councillor Gannon.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll keep it brief as some of the points have been raised. Obviously, Councillor Garrity raised about going to officers and staff directly. I know myself, and I'm sure you're the same, Chair, anything you raise, you know you've raised it and you know you have to chase it. That's the way it works. And we do have AOB if necessary, if something is taking an exceptional length of time. So there is options to raise things there still, Chair, because quite a lot of matters arising is repetition and asking for updates that would be better and more efficiently for everyone in the district if we went direct. But we haven't been making it through agendas, and I think chairs, not yourself, Chair, I must say you get through your agenda well, but I think chairs in general, and having chaired one meeting, feel the need to rush through discussions and debate, and we do not. And the quality of discussion, debate, and arguably the quality of democracy, someone mentioned that earlier, has suffered because to a degree lately, because chairs feel the need to rush to get business done, because we have to get business done and there's important decisions to be made, and chairs do their best to try and get everyone to have their say, but it just isn't possible at the minute. And we need to be aware that if we're making decisions, we need to hear all the voices and we need to hear everything correctly. I believe even Councillor Green had said recently about made a point in a council meeting. Obviously we had got through that council meeting earlier, but he had made the same point that we're rushing through things, and that's something that we can't have, because rushing through decisions is bad for accountability, Chair. So I think the proposal as proposed by Councillor Thompson and seconded by Councillor Garrity is the way to go here on this, but obviously it's up to the chamber. Thank you.
Thanks, Adam. And Councillor Irvine.
Thanks very much, Stephen. I suppose I'm going to talk about the elephant in the room at this stage, because a couple of councillors have skirted around what is actually happening. And the proposals basically on the table at the moment are to try and cope with the situation that I believe is becoming at times unmanageable. And if we go back to why we needed a peer review, we needed a peer review, or we felt we needed a peer review because our meetings weren't actually going through properly. We did that. We have a paper that's submitted basically by NILGA, that's Appendix 2. And on page 5, the first note, it's not a recommendation, obviously, but it's a note. It's consideration of members' appetite for an alternative standing committee structure. The elephant in the room is that we still are the only council out of the 11 in Northern Ireland that have full member committees. All the others have reduced size committees. Why? Because it's the way things happen. And I appreciate that people want a voice. It's not undemocratic. But I think if you critically and objectively analyse what has happened over the last year across all our committees, some have got through the business because they have a lighter workload. Those committees that have a heavy workload have struggled to actually get through. Admittedly, the virtual meetings that we have because of COVID-19 have not helped, but they still are a factor. And really, until we actually decide, do we want to look at the committee structures? Because we've recently had an agriculture committee and we decided to go for a reduced size committee. Why? To actually possibly to get the work done. I think we need a mature debate around this to see what's going on, rather than taking the recommendations on the table. And we have to see where we go. If not, I feel that we'll have another year that could be torturous. That's my talk about the elephant. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Robert. Councillor Thornton, briefly, please.
I'll be very brief, Chair. I totally agree, actually, with what Robert has said there. We are skirting round the findings that were provided. So I do think we need to really think, can we have reduced committees and a greater democracy that we can talk rather than rushing through the points that some of the members want to make? Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. Okay, so there's clearly two different opinions in the chamber, so I'll just go straight to the vote and I'll take them in the order that they were raised. So Councillor McAleer's proposal first, seconded by Councillor O'Coffey, that we take the recommendations with the exception of item 3, and it's to retain matters arising. Emmett, I'm on the ball there, am I?
Sinead,
Yep.
Stevie, good man.
Okay, grand. So I'll just take it through the roll call, members, as I have it in front of me there. So starting off, Councillor Armstrong.
Against.
Councillor Baird.
Against.
Councillor Blake.
Against.
Councillor Buchanan.
Against.
Councillor Glenn Campbell.
For.
Councillor Sean Clark. No word to Sean. Councillor John Coyle.
Against.
Councillor Curry is an apology. Councillor Deehan.
For.
Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Sean Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Stephen Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Keith Elliott.
Against.
Councillor Deborah Erskine.
Against.
Councillor Anthony Feely.
For.
Councillor Anne-Marie Fitzgerald. Might be late, I think, possibly. Councillor Gannon.
Against.
Councillor Garrity.
Against, Chair.
Councillor Green.
For.
Councillor Irvine.
Against.
Councillor Keenan. Apology for Mayman. Councillor Catherine Kelly.
For.
Councillor Padraig Kelly.
For.
Say again, Padraig.
For. Did you get
For.
that, Stephen?
Yeah, we have you now. Yeah, that's grand. For, thank you. Just
Yeah.
a bad connection. That's grand. Okay, Councillor Tommy Maguire.
Lahey for.
Councillor McAleer.
For.
Councillor Chris McCaffrey.
Lahey for.
Councillor Stephen McCann is for. Councillor John McCloughy.
Against.
Councillor Michael Duff.
Valver. For.
Councillor McPhillips.
Against.
Against. Councillor O'Coffey.
For.
Councillor O'Reilly.
For.
Councillor Rainey.
Against.
Councillor Paul Robinson.
Against.
Councillor Chris Smith.
Against, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Swift.
For.
Councillor Thompson.
Against.
Councillor Thornton,
Against?
Councillor Warrington,
Against.
and Councillor Wilson. Did we get Bert, did we? He's not in. Okay. Alison, do you want to just? Okay, thank you, Alison. So I'm informed that that was 17 for and 18 against, so that proposal falls. Just guide me through the next one, Alison, then. So does it then stand, or we go for a vote again, do we? Or it's a direct, yeah, okay, so that's carried. Okay. So that proposal then is, or the recommendations is passed then as per the report. Moving on to item 5.2 then, members. Is proposed arrangements for the annual general meeting of the council, paper B, and I'll invite Alison there.
Thank you, Chair. Just maybe if I may say at the outset, in terms of the annual meeting, I've referenced in the paper guidance is still being awaited regarding the legislation. I think the likelihood is the legislation will not be made in time for the for the virtual annual meeting, and as such, in all likelihood, we will have to have a socially distant meeting with a quorum. I will liaise with the relevant nominating officers in advance of that meeting, but that would be held in the town hall, and we would work with the safe capacity available to us. Other members would be able to join remotely, as would the members of the public, Chair. So we'll clarify that in due course. The rest of the report then sets out the arrangements for the annual meeting, and attached to the report, Chair, are the I suppose the schedule of responsibility, the positions of responsibility for our incoming chairs, including the council chair and vice chair, together with the lists of other groupings. What I would advise, Chair, is that that was the last annual meeting schedule of committee and body appointments. So I am aware that there have been a number of changes to terminology in the intervening period, but we would deal with those at the meeting in June. I've also highlighted in the report, Chair, the discussion that we had last month regarding the establishment of the Rural Affairs Subcommittee. So as detailed in the report, and we did seek advice on this matter, subcommittees, because they're defined in legislation, cannot be made by agreement. So the designation and representation of such a subcommittee would be using the method known as quota greatest remainder. Members could request that the Rural Affairs would not have a subcommittee status, and that would also apply then, Chair, to the Health and Social Care Advisory Group, where it was suggested that that too would have a subcommittee status. In terms of the composition of those groups, Chair, if quota greatest remainder would apply, there would be an insignificant difference in terms of the parties, but there would be a difference in terms of single members and independents. So there would be a change in the composition, and the final working of those would be dependent on whether, because it relates to all seats available, it would be determined by whether we would have one subcommittee or two subcommittees. So in other words, if there are 17 spaces, 15 spaces, or 32 spaces for allocation. So the recommendations then, Chair, are that the Council notes the report in terms of the annual meeting, confirms its position in relation to whether it wishes to proceed to the formal establishment of subcommittees, and we would take the nominations in either case at the annual meeting, and that the party nominating officers give due consideration to the nominations for year 3, and again we would take those next month, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Alison. So I'm just going by that then. So we need to get the status of these working groups or subcommittees agreed first, and that will in turn then give us an indication of the membership. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so
so sorry, Chair, maybe to clarify, unless we go to a subcommittee, the membership is as currently agreed, namely our discussion by agreement last month and the existing composition of the Health and Social Care Advisory Group. So it's only if there is a change to subcommittee would necessitate the discussion regarding the composition.
Okay, that's great. Okay, Councillor Green.
Well, I thought that we passed this in council, that the Rural Affairs or the Rural Inequalities Committee, whatever it's called, was going to be a subcommittee. And I thought that a decision that has been made shouldn't be changed within 6 months. Maybe I'm wrong on that. But going by this, this can be changed within a week or two of the actual decision being made. I would strongly suggest that it remains and retains the title of subcommittee, as it gives it more teeth. It has a bigger say in the council. I just don't get how we're swinging to and froing. We made a decision a couple of weeks ago. We made it a subcommittee. I don't know where this does come out of, that officers then decide or come up with a reason then why it shouldn't be a subcommittee. The council made the decision. It was voted for and it was passed. And I would suggest, I think we said that it should be 17. I think it should be 17 member subcommittee. And that's what we agreed, and that's what we should stick to. And I actually think it's against standing orders or against the council's constitution to be even considering changing this so quick.
Yeah, do you want to respond, Alison?
Yes, certainly, Chair. I thought it was clear in paragraph 1.6, but happy to clarify again. Our understanding at the last Policy and Resources Committee meeting was that nominations to subcommittees could be made by agreement. We did seek legal advice to clarify, because if Councillor Green recalls, there was some debate as well regarding the final composition and how that would have been reflected overall. And we were advised that because a subcommittee is defined in legislation, the only mechanisms of nomination to it are by quota greatest remainder.
And can I just clarify, just on a follow-up question, did we or did we not agree to form a Rural Affairs subcommittee?
Yes, we did, Chair. That's correct, and that's what we're highlighting to you. If the members wish to proceed with the subcommittee, the only difference is we cannot nominate by agreement. We nominate by quota greatest remainder.
And can the council change the decision so quickly that was already made?
Yeah, Chair, if it cannot be legislatively complied with, yes, it can.
Okay. Okay, thanks for that clarity there, Alison. Thank you, Seamus. Councillor Coffey.
Thank you, Chair. I just would like to clarify, because this is fairly concerning, frankly, because one of the reasons I really hoped to be elected was to be able to defend local health services. And my reading of this is that if this change goes through as per the newly sought legal advice, then I don't think I would be represented on the Health Committee, which is a committee which I feel is very, very important for the retention of local services. Now, I know other councillors feel equally on this, but it is something I'm very focused on. So I just would like to clarify as to my own position on under this count, because I'm frankly unaware of it. My reading is that it would appear I would not be on it. So thank you, Chair.
Chair, again, the matter relates to if you choose to change the designation. If the Health and Social Care Advisory Group remains as currently constituted, which is an informal working group reporting through, there is no change to the membership. In the event that the Council wishes to proceed to change to a subcommittee status for the Health and Social Care Advisory Group, yes, the nominations would be by quota greatest remainder, and it will depend on whether Rural Affairs and Health and Social Care, that would equate to 32 places being available in total. And certainly my understanding of the calculations would be that Councillor O'Coffey would not have an allocation on that list. It would depend on how the independents do their final picks.
Okay, thank you.
So if we remain as is, Chair, there is no change on the Health Care Group.
Okay, that's grand, thank you. Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, again, quite concerned with the report that's been brought back, and I'm wondering how we can come to an agreement on something that we've already agreed on, or like the previous speakers, I was sure we had already agreed on. I appreciate that there is a legal element. I'm not sure if who exactly had requested the legal advice. I thought there was an agreement made, and that was it. But my question really is, what's the difference in terms of the powers or the authority of a subcommittee and one of the working groups? And I ask that because my understanding is that the groups in question were requested to be subcommittees to permit access of in the public or the press, whereas the groups that isn't a facility. Are there any other benefits or advantages to being a subcommittee in that it would make sense to retain the committee, the working group status, and come to an agreement amongst ourselves tonight that we open the meetings to the press and to the public?
I think that
Or-
conversation, sorry, Emma, that conversation's been had a number of times, and we're aware of the reasons why that can't happen in terms of a working group status. However, if it was to be given that extra clout, I suppose, of that title of subcommittee, I understand the press then would have, and I looked at Alison for clarity, that the press would have access to that, and I know that would address some concerns that members have raised in the past.
Yeah, Chair, just to comment specifically on that query, the only difference is that the full provisions of standing orders apply to subcommittees. So therefore members of the press and public would have normal access as they do to other meetings, other standing committee or council meetings. There would be no difference in terms of decision-making powers because both groups will report through to policy and resources as with their respective papers, but it would be in relation to the normal provisions of standing orders and the access to the public. That would be the main difference.
Okay, Councillor Geraghty, please.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll be brief because I think Alison may have answered some of the concerns I had with it. I've got to say from the outset, it is a wee bit regrettable because I think we had crossed a bridge and agreed to numbers and nominations, and I think everyone was content. So it is a bit regrettable, but I understand Alison what she's saying, and that if it's not legislatively enforceable, we come upon this quandary whether we like it or not. I suppose this committee, just for clarity, Alison, was still going to have to report back to full council, and then reports on it, obviously, as it was a subcommittee or whatever is going to be deemed to be called. That still would happen in an informal working group, and the issues that are concerning us all could still be raised in the same timely manner and brought back to full council. I think what I'm trying to say is, okay, with maybe the absence of the press, we would still get all our concerns, highlighted and brought to the table. Things that are very, important to us as local councillors and rural councillors. But would that be correct, Alison? It would be a slight change, but still would be brought to full council, and any issues of concern will be raised at an informal working group.
Chair, yes, reports or the actions from the group would be reported through policy and resources, irrespective of whether it would be a working group or a subcommittee status.
Right. Well, I suppose to the Chair on that, my personal vote, I haven't really been speaking to my entire group fully, thrashing this out. I think it's important that this committee or group is established, and I think it was a wonderful idea. So I would hate to have it, not on part of the council, and maybe the way forward is an informal working group so it can still go ahead and do, I think, the genuine work that people have intended to do in it. So that'd be my opinion on that, but I'll see what we're like as a party in a minute. Thank you.
Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I suppose this is a little surprising, and it is a bit regrettable that we didn't have the information regarding the legislative requirements prior to making this decision. And I am concerned in particular that members of small parties and independents would be excluded. I am a very strong believer in inclusion. I think as elected members, we all have a duty to represent our constituents, and we feel very strongly on many of these issues, particularly relating to rural affairs and health and social care delivery. So I think that Alison, Chair, has clarified for us that in practical terms, there's not a huge amount of difference between the powers and prestige of a subcommittee versus a working group or an advisory group. And for that reason, I feel that the more important issue is to ensure in as wide a representation and inclusion as possible, and that we should retain the title of working group rather than subcommittee. Councillor Green raises the issue of the status of the group and whether or not it would be able to exercise more leverage in terms of getting actions carried out or getting our voices heard. But if the subcommittee still reports to PNR, then we would still have that course of action open to us. And also in terms of involving the press and the public through our statutory committees, we would have the opportunity to raise and highlight issues there. So I would propose support Councillor Garrity's proposal that we should really just call these groups working groups or advisory groups and allow the current membership to stand. Chair, thank you.
Okay, I don't think Councillor Garrity actually made a proposal, and Mary, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think you were just giving an opinion and then you're going to come back to us. But...
To the chair, then. Thanks, Stephen. And but spoken to the group, happy to second Councillor Deevens if she needs it. Thank you.
Yes,
okay.
I would propose accordingly, Chair. Thank you.
No problem. Councillor Green.
Yeah, just a couple of things, and thank you, Stephen, for letting me back in again. I am very passionate about this, given that there's me that proposed it and come up with the idea of this. I am in the agricultural working group, and there's brilliant work being done on it. But for all the wee bit of that comes back to committee, it doesn't. We'd actually have to get the chair to write himself to government bodies and to ministers, because it takes that long for it to get back through the committees, through the council, and that it doesn't even then, by the time it gets that done, even have relevance by the time all of that happens. We to get the chair of our, which is Councillor Rainey at the minute, he can confirm this, to write independently as the chair of it, actually, and not go through the things because it's so cumbersome, the working group. Now, it does great work, but that's the way we had to do it, to get around the structures. Now, I don't for 1 minute agree with the chief executive. When I made this proposal, I did not mention anything about working groups or makeup or anything. I proposed, and I will defy anyone to go back on it. I proposed that we set up a rural inequality subcommittee. Now, anything other discussions was outside that. That was the proposal, and I maintain that the council supported that proposal. Anything else has transpired after that has nothing to do with that proposal. And I would like legal advice as to why this is coming back within 2 or 3 weeks of a decision being made. And the decision had nothing to do with membership or anything. That was a side issue.
Okay.
The thing was agreed, and I want legal advice on if we are changing council policy within 2 weeks. I think it's a disgraceful thing to be at.
Okay. I think I'll just get Alison to clarify that, but I think legal advice has been sought, Councillor Green, under 1.6 in the report, but I'll just get Alison just to clarify
Not
that,
on
just
that,
to be sure.
not on my point.
Chair, also, I don't think Councillor Green either misinterpreted what I said. I didn't say that the rural affairs had been proposed or established as anything other than a subcommittee, what I said was in relation to the Health and Social Care Advisory Group, if there was no change in its status to the subcommittee, then its membership would remain the same. And I said in relation to the Rural Affairs Subcommittee, the only difference is that we have to formally confirm the nominations are by quota greatest remainder. I further added that why the matter has been brought back to you is that following the discussion at Policy and Resources last month and in the preparations for the annual meeting, it was clarified from legal advice that there is no mechanism to nominate by agreement to a subcommittee because it is defined in legislation.
And the main point is that the subcommittee was
through the chair,
formed through the chair. The subcommittee was formed. What happens outside that there? That was formed. That's what the council.
Okay.
In my opinion, and I would like legal advice if anything else has been proposed different than that.
Councillor Michael Duff.
Obviously, I want to support retaining the subcommittee status for rural affairs, and I understand that it may have come to light then that the membership makeup of it has implications or whatever, but I think Councillor Green's point still stands that we decided to go down the road of a rural affairs subcommittee. We'd originally talked about a rural inequality subcommittee, but we allowed the title to change to Rural Affairs Subcommittee, and that's what the proposal is, and I think that's what we will be sticking with as a council, obviously. Just a second query would be, in the interests of transparency and openness, and access for media and press to council meetings, just maybe seek clarification on when the press is permitted to attend and observe, and when the press is not to. Obviously, where possible, if we're not talking about HR issues or personnel issues, sometimes that can be the cause for confidentiality, of course, understandable. But in the main, we'd want to err on the side of being open and transparent. So what is the state of play with regard to media access to the various council meetings and various council structures? Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Go ahead, Alison.
Yeah, Chair, again, it's defined in the legislation, Councillor. So in terms of the Local Government Act makes provision for access to for the public and the media to all standing council and committee meetings and subcommittee meetings. There are confidential grounds and exempt grounds when those meetings would go into committee, and those would be the only items for press or public to be excluded. So that would be as we would run our business. In terms, there is no provision for attendance at working groups in terms of media or public. And my understanding how this discussion was first raised in the context of the governance review was health, first of all, in terms of to allow public access for the debate, and the prominence in terms of rural affairs, rural inequalities. So in other words, Chair, the provisions for access would be as detailed in standing orders, and they would be the ones that would apply to subcommittees.
Okay, thank you for that clarity. Alison. Councillor Gallen, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. Look, there's good points on both sides of this. There's no reason why one can be a subcommittee and the other be an informal group, or whatever the members want. In particular the health group, and Alison can correct me if I'm wrong, but she said that this was looked at, changing the health group into a formal subcommittee because some members wanted it open to the press and it needed to be a subcommittee for that rather than informal. And I believe it may have been Councillor Recoffey is one of the people asking for that, and he's unhappy clearly with it being a subcommittee. So we have to, I think the people who are looking for it to go to the public and stuff, whilst it'd be nice to have the public access to everything, as I'm sure you'd agree, Chair, it may not always happen. And it can't always be that way, as has been said many times, as you said yourself. And look, at the end of the day, whatever it's called, the work is still being done. It'd be nice for public to be present. but we don't need the press there to do our work. And I know I don't, but just to bring it down to our choices here, Chair. So our choice is either working groups with members by agreement, or subcommittee where it comes to the allocated method that Alison, the quota greatest remainder method that Alison previously described. Just to clarify that, Chair, thank you.
Okay, I'm hoping the next few speakers is going to move on to the proposal so we can get this debate's been had and it's had very well. So I'm hoping that we can move on to the direction here. Okay, I'm just clarify as well, members, we've got a call-in user there online. If you can just identify yourself there, please. Call-in user, I just don't see it here, Damien. Yeah, call-in user 2 there. You're on the phone. If you just identify yourself, please. Go ahead there. You're off mute. Call-in user 2 can identify themselves there, please. You're back on mute, call-in user, if you can hear me. Yes, go ahead there now. You're off mute, call-in user 2. If you can just identify yourself, please. Yeah, we're going to have to just, if you can't identify yourself, call-in user 2, we're going to have to remove you from the meeting. Call-in user 2, we're going to have to disconnect you if you can't confirm yourself. Confirm your identity. Okay, go ahead, Damien. Just a few seconds, members, and we'll get. Okay, we can proceed there now. Okay, so I think we had Councillor O'Coffey up next there. Go ahead, Donald. Briefly, I think you've been in before, so members, just keep it brief.
Three things really. One is I don't see Alice, the Chief Executive stated that there is no provision under the Local Authority Act she stated there was provision under the Local Authority Act for committees and subcommittees to have press attendance. I understand that, and it's entirely correct. Okay. What I don't understand is that there is, because there is no provision, doesn't mean that there cannot be press at other meetings. And
sorry, Donald, that conversation's been had. So if you're making a new point, let's make it and move on. There's a couple of people looking to speak here.
The second point is, in terms of the calculation, if these things are run separately, then it has one effect. If they are run concurrently, so that there's a sequentially, let's put it that way, then it would have a different effect. So I believe the press should have access, and if whatever comes after that, I'm willing to take, because I think we can fight for services outside of whatever structures exist. So I just want to say, I think the press needs to have access to the full workings of this council as far as possible, and as a principle from you. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, is that a proposal, Councillor Coffey?
Yes, I'll make that as a proposal. Thank you.
Okay, so you're opting for subcommittee status for both committees, for both groups, health and for rural affairs. Okay, thank you. Councillor McAleer, again, briefly, you've been in before, so I know you had a query, but make it brief, please.
Yes, Chair, and it might accommodate everyone, and it'll be a bit cumbersome now, but it would work if everybody was agreeable to it, that we proceed, as Councillor Coffey says there, with subcommittee status. But as there is an existing health committee there in place, and there has been an agreement reached on the rural subcommittee, that when it came to the individual members or parties at the time of appointment, that they either select a member for the committee as agreed or as is existing, or pass if they don't have that and it hasn't been agreed or it's not an existing member. I appreciate it's going to be a bit more time consuming and that you'll possibly have to work through the list of councillors at a maximum twice, but it would accommodate everybody if people are agreeable to it. And I think up until now there has been consensus on that, and it would facilitate both the subcommittee status and it would facilitate access to the press and public. So that
Okay.
would be a suggestion. I know it's.
I don't think that's possible. I think that's just something that we can't do, Councillor McAleer. I looked to Alison for clarity, but I don't think we can do that.
No, that's correct, Chair. You just would either, as Councillor O'Coffey said, you'd have to run everything either one as a subcommittee, one as not a subcommittee, or both as subcommittees, or neither.
Okay.
And then the numbers are affected overall.
Okay, members, I want to really bring this.
Clarification on that, because I know when the
Sorry, Emmett, that's been clear.
Responsibility come up at the
Sorry,
AGM, you can
sorry,
deny
Emmett.
them.
Sorry, Councillor McAleer. We're going to move on here. Councillor Irvine.
Sorry, Chair, just that's
Sorry, Councillor McAleer. We're going to move on. Councillor Irvine, go ahead. Sorry. about that, Councillor
Question for Alison. Alison, if we make these proper standing subcommittees of the council, will the subcommittees attract an SRA for whoever's put in chair?
No, Chair, they're not defined as positions of responsibility.
That's okay.
Okay.
Just put that clarified. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we've got a number of proposals here then. So the first proposal was by Councillor Deehan and seconded by Councillor Garrity. Just confirm your proposal, Councillor Deehan, please, just so we have it.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, in the interest of inclusivity and to ensure the best representation from all members, I would propose that we should designate the Rural Affairs Subcommittee as a working group and retain the existing status of the Health and Social Care Working Group. And that would be my proposal in essence, Chair. Because as I've said, Chair, the powers of the committee are subcommittees and working groups are the same. The only difference is access to the public and the press.
And that's been made very clear.
And I think representation and input from members is more important and should be the greater priority. Thank you, Chair.
Point of order, please.
Very, very briefly, Seamus.
Can I get that clarified again with Alison, because I'm still not clear whether a council decision that was made and was ratified now can a week or so later without a call-in can be changed.
Go ahead, Alison.
Yeah, Chair, I thought I had provided clarity previously. The council has agreed to establish a Rural Affairs Subcommittee. The only method of nomination to a subcommittee is quota greatest remainder.
So that proposal falls then, that was proposed there, because that's not what it says.
I think what Councillor Deehan's proposing that we go with the working group status. Is that correct, Councillor Deehan?
Yeah, but that goes against what Alison's have to say.
Okay, well, listen, I think the debate's been had, members, so we're going to move on.
Alison, clarify that again, then, because I think Alison has said that we can't do what that proposal says.
Okay,
Maybe I'm wrong on that, but
okay, Alison, I think it's in 1.6 of the report, isn't it? Page 2. Just one more time, Alison, please.
No, of course, Chair. Yeah, it's detailed in paragraph 1.6, the discussion at our last month's meeting, and the council had agreed to proceed to a Rural Affairs Subcommittee. We've clarified around the legal advice, and nominations cannot be made by agreement to such committee. So if we wish to retain that designation, then membership will be determined by the quota greatest remainder method. Members could choose for this group not to be a subcommittee, and the agreed composition could remain.
Okay,
how can that be done without a call-in?
Sorry, Councillor Green. Josephine, can you just clarify your proposal again for the record, please? Just
yes, Chair. Right. Well, I'll break it down into two parts. First of all, the area of greatest contention appears to be whether we redesignate the Rural Affairs Subcommittee as the Rural Affairs Working Group. If we designate it as a working group, we can retain the existing agreed membership, and Alison has assured us that the powers of a working group and subcommittee are not different other than access to the public and the press. And then secondly, my proposal is that we should retain the status of the Health and Social Care Group as a working group and not change it to a subcommittee. For the same
Okay.
reasons, Chair, thank you.
Okay.
I
Okay.
want legal advice on that because that's against all our constitution and completely against standing orders. That we're changing the decision without a call in.
Okay. Is that a proposal, Councillor Green?
Yeah, that's a proposal, and I think Alison knows that I'm right, and that only should just
Okay.
hasn't 100% clarified.
Okay, members. Again, I started to take Councillor Deehan's proposal there. For just bear with me 1 second, members. Just bear with me 1 second to get some clarity myself here. 1 second.
Sorry, can I just check to see who calling user 3 is just there, please?
Hello, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, go ahead. Yes, Councillor Clark, is it?
Yeah, I was struggling there for quite a while
Okay,
there.
that's grand. Thanks, Sean. Okay, just
Right,
for
but-
clarity, members, in relation to that last item, if you've got a seconder for Councillor Green's request for legal opinion, that'll then be sought before we can take
Yes,
this matter to a conclusion.
here.
Okay,
Anthony
Councillor
here.
Feely.
I had to hand
Councillor
off
Feely,
Stevie this
that's
second.
grand. Okay, that's all I need there, Anthony. Thank you. So listen, so that's now on the guidance of the officers here that we seek a legal opinion on this, and then we will move forward on the basis of what comes back off that. Is that okay, Alison? Oh, sorry, but yeah, of course. Sorry, of course. Are we all agreed with that? Okay, I take silence as agreement.
Chair, sorry, through the chair, Stephen, I'm happy with the member's decision there, but just
Okay.
I think we're not going to get the exact same legal advice and pay twice for it. Can Alison confirm that is this a second opinion we're getting, or I just would be really loath to pay for legal
Okay.
opinion twice and get the same thing back. I think that would be
I
ridiculous.
think it'll be an in-house from our own legal team, Councillor Garrity, so it shouldn't
No
cost
issue,
any
as long as there's
additional.
no cost. Thank you.
Okay,
Chair.
members, so that deals with 5.2. It'll come back to us at the annual general meeting. 6.1, members, paper C is a procurement and tenders update. It's for us for updating. If I get a proposer and seconder, please to note the various recommendations on page 4. Councillor Warrington, I think, is in there. Victor? Councillor Irvine?
Happy to propose, Stephen.
Thank you, Robert. Councillor Thompson?
Happy to second, Chairman. Thank you.
Are we all agreed? Yeah, thank you, members. 6.2 is our staff update report, paper D. Celine, is there anything that you want to touch on this, or is it okay to go to a recommendation?
I don't know. I couldn't care less, to be honest.
Sorry, Robert,
They're all arguing among them.
Sorry. Sorry, Councillor Irvine, if you just make sure you're on mute there before you continue, it might be better. Okay.
Sorry,
Celine.
Chair, I was on mute there.
No, we could hear you loud and clear, so we could. Sorry.
Chair,
Sorry, Celine, go ahead there.
Chair,
6.2,
this is
Robert.
a routine report just on the staffing matter. So unless there's any queries, happy for you to take the recommendations there, which are all to note the information provided.
Okay, Councillor Stephen Donnelly.
No, Chair, happy enough to propose and to welcome the initiatives associated with Mental Health Week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen. And Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly.
Yes, Chair, happy to second the recommendations. Thank you.
Are we all in agreement?
Chair, can I just ask a question in relation to the paper?
Go ahead.
Happy enough, and again, to welcome the mental health initiatives and the Connect with Nature thing, but in relation to the first appendix, and I think Alison had briefly touched on this in the previous point, there's it's just to clarify the local authority meetings and whether they're going to be happening, I suppose, in person or online, or what the future plan is, because the attachment mentions 2 dates, the first of those being the 17th of May and the second being the 21st of June. But on further inspection, that seems to be in relation to England, councils in England and Wales. So I'm not sure if there's separate guidance for here, or I know she had briefly mentioned that there may be arrangements need to be made for the annual meeting, but do we have any idea of what's happening just going forward in relation to that. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks so much.
Chair, maybe I can make a comment and Alison can add to it. I suppose the guidance for staff at the moment would still be that, you know, there is an element of working from home where that is feasible, and or then very much a focus on social distancing at this point in time. So yes, there will be challenges around the annual general meeting or annual meeting and any other subsequent meetings that we have, about the you know, how many can attend, and indeed what staff then will also have to be considered as part of those in physical attendance. We're just at a difficult point at the time. It would be much preferable if the legislation had continued on, but we're going to have to look at alternative arrangements and try and come to the best arrangements that we can.
Okay, Councillor Swift.
Gurmagat, and just very quickly, thank you, Celine. And sorry I didn't get a chance to email you directly. Just can you elaborate a little bit under 2.2.1, the green gyms? Just what exactly are they? And everything else about Mental Health Week, I think detailed has been marvellous. And suffice to say, I am out experiencing, sharing and talking about nature, so I'm playing my part, hearing the cuckoo loudly and clearly in my townland on a daily basis, looking at the beautiful bluebells and seeing little yellow finches for the first time today. So all of that's lovely, and there's competitions going on within the parish as to who's hearing what first and spotting what's sprouting up in terms of spring and indeed some summer flowers already. So all's lovely. If you can tell me a little bit more about green gyms, I would appreciate that. Gurmagat.
Thank you, Bernice.
Through the chair, I'm going to have to refer to a colleague because these events were aimed at both our HR team and also those involved with health and well-being. So I haven't had an opportunity to participate in those events myself. So I don't know what the Green Gym initiative is, but it is the idea being that they would then work to implement those in the council and, you know, again, as part of health and well-being promotions. We have been, as you say, been promoting nature as an important element this week, and this is something maybe that would follow on from that. So I will have to get further information and provide that whenever we get that fed back from those who are participating.
Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you, Chair. And it's really just to comment on 2.2.2, the Chair's mental wealth event, and to thank Celine for organising this event and for the really excellent speakers. You know, I think we've taken a lot, the other delegates at it took a lot away from that. There's some exciting resource material coming through that I think we'll be paying attention to, particularly for mental health for young people. So just to put on record to the councils for the work being done by the council to address mental wealth, and I think mental health indeed, and I think, you know, it'll fit well in with our community planning. So thank you for that, Celine.
Okay, thank you, Diana. Okay, so that deals with paper D, members. Happy enough. So moving on then to the Director Report, Corporate and Services, paper E, and I'll just get Celine to take us through paper E, please.
Okay, yes, Chair. So 5 items in this report, a number again to do with the elected member development work that's ongoing. Information on letters to ministers, then some confirmation around accreditation of the hydro plant, and then just your usual update on the Constitution, which includes the revised Code of Conduct, which was issued through NILGA.
Okay, thank you. Councillor McAleer.
Recommendations there as number 8.
Okay, perfect. Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and picking up on one of the items contained within this is 2.4 and the further information on the hydro plant. And I've been in contact recently with a number of the local angling organisations, including Camoan Anglers and Oma Anglers and the Ulster Angling Federation, and they're really concerned that this is back on the agenda. They thought that this item had been removed and wasn't being taken forward. They reiterated to me that the time this issue or this initiative was first trialled, it actually drained the stretch of water, the stretch of river that it was on, leaving the fish and the young fish lying in the bed, and they were then picked off by predators and birds and that. So they have really raised some quite serious concerns in relation to this going forward. They've asked me to query in terms of the expenditure to the council and therefore the expenditure to the local ratepayer in relation to what has currently been spent and what is going to be spent going forward in relation to this. They've queried the impact that it will have on salmon spawning and the native fish to the area, when it's well known or well advised that the less man-made obstructions that are in rivers, the better it is for migratory fish. And to that end, even they've raised concerns in relation to the weir in the town centre here in Omagh. So I would be proposing that we actually, before we make a decision on this, we actually contact the Camoan Anglers, the Omagh Anglers, the Ulster Angling Federation to address the current mandate of the council, to give them a bit more feedback and a bit more information in relation to this, because I'm not an angler, but hearing their concerns and with their much greater knowledge of the local waterways, I would be very concerned with going forward in this. They spoke about the percentage of water that needs to be in the river in order to make this operational. So there are limits even in terms of when the hydro can be run. And not only that, but they also mentioned that up to 25% of the spawning salmon of the Foyle basin are actually based in the Camoan. So that's a huge amount of the salmon stock within our local waterways, and really that money and expenditure would be better spent in restoring and improving our waterways as opposed to obstructing them with man-made facilities. So I would be very keen that we look to bring in that expertise before we proceed on the motion or the proposal in front of us. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks, Emmett. Councillor Irvine.
Yeah, no, I was happy to propose the recommendations, but under 2.4, I was just was a time frame involved in bringing it back in regard. We've had this before, and I think Councillor McAleer's fears are genuine, and I think running in conjunction with that, I think we would need to reassure ourselves as a council that what we have put in under the predecessor council, Omagh District Council, is in fact fish friendly. I know it was designed that way, but we need reassurance now if we're going to actually proceed. But I'm happy to go with the recommendations. Thank you very much.
Okay. That's proposal to endorse them as they are, Councillor Irvine?
Yeah, that's correct, Stephen. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Coffey?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I have to say that I want to second Councillor McAleer's proposal. There's a lot of research being done in the English chalk rivers, and these are spate streams and completely different. So I have to say overall, the cost of this is a question mark. Like, what is it going to cost? And we've heard a lot about these so-called fish-friendly facilities, including the ESB and some points in the Republic of Ireland. And I don't see that there's a strong case for this at this stage without seeing further detail on the impact on fish. And I think the impact on ratepayers of a project which will actually have a negative environmental impact and it's supposed to be an environmental impact project is questionable. I think it was initially priced at 400,000, and I think we spent 1.32 million to date, and we still haven't finished it. So I'm really questioning that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Donald. Councillor Swift.
Gurbagat, and just very quickly under 2.3 about the letters to the Stormont ministers, it just strikes me that really the real question that must be asked is not just about the amount of letters that we send on a monthly basis to Stormont ministers, but the analysis, the actual analysis of the effectiveness of the same in terms of actual outcomes and delivery to our citizens. So, you know, it does beg the question, and it's been a theme through our meeting all night, you know, has the Stormont Department provided any meaningful difference to the lives of our constituents? And if we don't give voice to the ongoing issues and problems rurally, then we can categorically state the responses back has been extremely limited. You know, if you take, for example, under the appendix, the Department of Education, 22 letters to the Minister. Well, my experience on behalf of my constituents in the Brawley area, he has wielded his pen and made a failure of a decision to attempt to close rural education in that area, all of which could definitely damage in terms of sustainability, the choice of the people and that economy of the rural region. And it's something that we cannot sit by and allow to happen. Again, Deirdre and our agricultural working group has been mentioned. 32 letters went to that particular minister, with failed decisions for the rural farmers, continued bad decisions for sustainability and the economic prosperity of the farmers. Now, I know the Executive Office has collective responsibility, but again, we're writing letters to specific people for specific responses to make a difference positively to our lives in this super council area. I then have had the issues with DFI Rivers, and quite a few councillors were present at the Bow meeting recently, and that rural region has been failed in terms of a viable solution regarding the adverse impacts of the ongoing flooding in that area. And it has to be said that the Flooding Task Force report is long outdated, with great ambitious actions that still have to be implemented. So just in conclusion, Ciara, I feel strongly that on behalf of our rural citizens, those people who are taxpayers and ratepayers, there is definitely a glaring omission in the return of services for what they are paying for. And maybe we should be considering the next letter is to write that that particular building and performance should be closed down, and disseminate the budgets to our local authority, where we, the councillors here, could certainly agree to invest and provide for all those in need. And 55% of our rates actually go to Stormont, you know, so we're not getting good bang for our buck. Garmagat.
Thank you, Bernice. Councillor Michael Duff.
Thank you, Chair. Good, Stephen, Caherly. I too was contacted by anglers, and I suppose from the outset, I would say that anglers are a very significant lobby within our council area. And, you know, an essential element of our community planning is that we co-determine or co-decide and co-design schemes, you know. So I would want to be absolutely 100% sure that the voice and the concerns of the anglers are being heard here. Now, some time ago in the Legacy Omagh Council, I believe it was, there was an initial study visit to Scotland. Some of the councillors who are still elected to this council will have been on that delegation, and they came home with the news about safe ways of doing this and unsafe ways of doing that. So I think we'd need some, as councillors, would want to be maybe have an informal meeting where we discuss this, and it's about making sure the anglers' voices are being heard. One of the key things that was said to me today is that we need to ensure safe passage for migratory salmon to their spawning grounds in places like the River Tunnigan on the Camoan River. You know how essential that is, and that no scheme should get in the way of that. No scheme should obstruct that. No damaging scheme. So these are very serious matters, and I think, you know, anglers are such a significant lobby, you know, community partners, that we need to include them in meaningful discussions. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Barry. There's quite a few members looking to speak, so please, members, be brief as possible unless you're bringing something new to the table. Councillor Fitzgerald. Sorry, apologise. Councillor Fitzgerald.
Yes. I have also been contacted.
Anne-Marie, we can't hear you, Anne-Marie.
Hello.
You're very, very poor connection there.
Maybe if I take common source here. Hello.
Go ahead, Anne-Marie.
Hello.
Hello.
We'll have a connection, but volume seems to be the problem there, Chair. But I can faintly hear.
It's a poor connection, so it is. So, do you want to fly ahead there, Councillor Fitzgerald?
Can you get?
Yeah, that's you there now, Anne-Marie.
Okay, I don't know what happened there. Yes, I've also been contacted by numerous anglers the last lot of days, and I suppose with ourselves as councillors and that there is other people who are more expert in the field, and our local anglers are definitely more concerned, I suppose, have more knowledge than the rest of us have. And I'm not a fisher woman, so I don't really understand, but I'm chatting to them, yes, I do. And I think as a council, are we able to explore any more measures to see what can be done with the hydro at the minute, or if there's anything else that can be assistance, you know, because I think it is the anglers were saying that it is a great idea, brilliant initiative, and it's something to be welcomed, but that is the wrong river for it. If you go down further towards Newton Stewart, where there's more streams going into it, where there's more depth of water and a higher volume of water that can take that there, it's much more. But where it is situated, they feel that it has a negative impact on migratory salmon, and 80% of the migratory salmon coming into the foil until our rivers actually goes up through that point, and they feel that there is going to be a detrimental impact from just north of that wheel. And for my area, that's where all our migratory salmon comes up until our small rivers. And you know, and I would have concerns, because us as a council, like, we're all into biodiversity, and we had a bee initiative there a couple of weeks ago, a motion come in, and we're about flora and fauna and our verges and that. So I would have concerns just about the whole process. And I know that there's probably a bit late in the day what we can do. It's up. There's been quite a few issues with it, but is there any other measures we can do, and even take in for a meeting with our Omagh anglers, or even to get the experts who was involved in the hydro to come in as well? Because I think this is a very much there's two different things. You have the experts from the hydro, we have the Lochs Agency, but who doesn't go into the rivers at a certain point up from, and we also have the local anglers. So I'd like a more joined up approach, maybe with a meeting with everybody if possible, and I propose that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kelly, Pádraig again.
Thanks, Stephen. Hopefully my connection's a bit better now, is it?
It is, yes, go ahead.
Just been working on it here. No, I have also been contacted by local anglers, and as I'm a Loch McRory councillor, I see the importance of angling in our area. We have a great fishing and angling club here, but there are severe concerns, and they know a lot more about fishing than me. But I do believe that a meeting with our local anglers would be the most important aspect we can do now. I think that, you know, there are a lot of problems that still need ironed out, and I'd like to second both Anne-Marie and Barry's proposal about the meeting going forward.
Okay, Councillor Deehan.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Celine, for your report. And if it hasn't already been seconded, I'm happy to second the recommendations. In respect of the Camoan Hydro Scheme, I suppose this has been a long-running issue. And initially, when it was being developed by the Legacy Omagh District Council area, there was great excitement about it because it was very innovative, and it also was hoped that it would bring significant benefits to our local educational establishments in terms of the drive towards providing energy from renewable sources. And actually, most of this agenda item 2.4 concerns the accreditation of the scheme by Ofgem, and it has been accredited now, and I'm pleased about that. The other part of the proposal is that the council would progress to seek expressions of interest from interested partners in order to progress the project. And I personally would like to see this project progressed. The Legacy Omagh District Council was very aware of the concerns expressed by our local angling community and sought to do everything within its power to mitigate any risk.
Yes, Peter, how are you?
Sorry, Councillor Fitzgerald, just be sure you're on mute there, Anne-Marie.
Sought to do everything within its power to mitigate the risk. I think it's absolutely essential that we do take the anglers' concerns into consideration, and that any partnership going forward to progress this project, in which we have invested heavily, should seek to mitigate any risk to migratory salmon. And I'm sure that that will happen. We have always taken very seriously the concerns of the local angling community. They contribute a great deal to recreational facilities within the area. We want to support them. We have invested very heavily in this project, and I do think that it needs to come to fruition and pay dividends, not only in terms of generating electricity, but also in providing education and training opportunities to our local college. So I'm supportive of the meeting with the anglers, but I think what is most important is that in the progression of this scheme to operational status, that we have the correct engineering solutions to mitigate those risks. But that having been said, I would like to second the recommendation, Chair. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Baird, I'm just told that you were inadvertently knocked off the list there, so I'll bring Councillor Baird in here at this juncture. Sorry about that, Alex.
Yes, I thought that somebody knocked me off. No pun intended. Really, it's a question for Celine in relation to the 237 letters which were written over a 14-month period, averaging 17 a month. Do we know were they all responded to? That should be quite a simple answer. The other one was, were they all effective responses? And I don't know how that would be quantified.
Just in relation to that, Councillor Baird, any responses will be brought to the committee, and we'd have been able to discuss them and either respond further or note them. So, Celine, is there anything that you want to add to that, or is that the way it is? Yeah.
It is the way it is. It feels like more than 17 a month quite often from a Democratic Services point of view. There's a lot of correspondence, and I suppose the key question there for us is around the effectiveness of that. But again, I suppose I've listened to the comments there in relation to the hydro scheme. Just a couple of remarks in relation to that. As Councillor Deehan has mentioned, the main part of this report is advising that after a considerable period of time, years in fact, this scheme has now been approved by Ofgem, and that, I suppose, adds to the regulation around any electricity or arrangements for generation there through the scheme. I'm aware that there's also a number of licence arrangements that are in place about the operation of the scheme, but it hasn't been operational for some period of time, and that is an issue because there is a significant investment there. Even to stand down from the hydro scheme as it is now is going to require effectively decommissioning of the equipment that's there. So that in itself is not a no-cost option. I would note that the anglers were involved in the scheme originally, and that level of consultation did take place around the design and indeed the proposed design structure, as I understand, not being directly involved in it myself, and actually I suppose having some knowledge from a different perspective previously. So yeah, it's been a problem project for us for some time. We're aware of that. We've tried to keep council, or we've kept council up to date with key developments, and this is a milestone now to have achieved this this accreditation. It does mean that it is a valid, ironically, as we say, environmental project that will generate renewable energy. Potentially at times a considerable amount of renewable energy alongside the building which for the council uses the most energy and the most electricity and is the biggest user. So we do need to, if we have aspirations for net zero at a point in the future, we need to be actively looking at these type of issues. I don't believe that it is something that could be moved, but I can certainly take on board the members' comments and I suppose take a considered approach to how we would respond between getting the expert advice, the appropriate engagement and looking then to progress this to some form of operation, or indeed a decision by council to go in a different direction, and what the full cost implications are there too.
Okay, thanks, Celine. Councillor Thompson, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I think I'm happy enough with the recommendations as they're listed, but I do take on board the comments, and this has been a long-running saga, put it like that, to do with the hydro plant on the Coombe River. So I welcome that there will be some engagement with the anglers' representative groups, but I think it's been there long enough, and it's a long-running saga. So we need to get this sorted. I'm happy enough to support the recommendations as listed, Chair. Thank you.
Thanks, Earl. Okay, thank you. Councillor McCloughy.
Thank you, Chair. Again, I've been contacted by some of the anglers up there, and they don't refer to it quite as savoury. They call it the fish shredder, but that's another debate. One of their worries is if this starts up and running, is how they would. I think they're looking for some sort of safeguard that they can report incidents of fish kills and stuff directly, and some sort of direct line. And I don't know whether that can be incorporated in or not, but that maybe that could be something as well, could be included to help allay their concerns, that they would have some resource to contact immediately if they felt that there was something happening that was endangering the fish.
Thanks, John. Councillor Feely, Anthony.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Stevie. Yeah, I'll be brief. I just want to make a wee comment about the fishing and the hydro thing there. I know it's not my, I don't know much about it. I do know years ago there was the big job down on Lough Erne and Ballyshannon, the hydro centre there, and I do know that the fishing has never been the same since. Once you go against nature with them fish, it's just going to be very hard to get back. We'll be chatting a lot of fishermen because it's a big industry around here with Lough Melvin and Lough Erne. It's going to be. I have a lot of sympathy for the fishermen at that regard, because it's going to be very hard to get the fishing back to the way it was once you start messing about with it. I just wanted to make that wee comment, but I just
okay, thank you.
Talk briefly about the letters that Bernice brought up there, and I kind of agree with Bernice, like, about all the letters that has been sent in there, and we're not getting the right responses. But what choice have we? Like, we have to do something. Like, none of these ministers is going to come down to meet us, so it's all we have. And I would have proposed to write a few of them letters myself for the Brallar issue and for the farming issues there, like, and like, we have to be seen to be fighting and doing something, so we have to do it, like, and they don't put much effort into them letters now. I've just seen, for instance, the letters that Minister Weir sent back. He's just copying and pasting them. Like, the one we got back from accounts was the exact same one he sent back to the Parents Action Group, and the exact same one he sent back to Gemma Dolan, like, when she wrote to him about the same issue. Like, if they just try and show a wee bit more care and put a wee more effort into it, even when they do reply to us. But I just want to say we have no choice. What else can we do? We want to keep pumping them up to them, and hopefully we keep the pressure on them when they don't come to meet us, you know. So I just wanted to make them two comments, Stephen.
Thank you, Anthony. Okay, so members, we want to come to a conclusion here. I'll just speak to Councillor Irvine and Councillor Deehan. I know that Councillor McAleer had made a proposal that would cover 1, 2, 3 and 5, and just seek extra, work on item 4. And I think there was kind of broad consensus from them comments that we would do that. So I'm just wondering, would Councillor Irvine and Councillor Deehan be happy to go with that proposal from Councillor McAleer to endorse 1, 2, 3 and 5, and then we note the points and the actions from the issues in relation to the hydro plant? Are we happy with that?
Well, Chair, I would be concerned, Chair, that we're actually able to progress the project. I think members have spoken in favour of progressing the project with the proviso that the anglers' concerns are fully taken on board, and that we seek the technical guidance on how to minimise risk to fish. I think it's important that we progress it. It has to come to a resolution. At the moment, that recommendation includes seeking expressions of interest from suitable partners to progress the issue. So I would be in favour of the entire proposal with those provisos and safeguards to the angling community, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, and that's incorporating Councillor Fitzgerald's and Councillor McAleer's proposal, I think, as well. Emma, do you
Yes, absolutely.
content with that?
Chair, no, that's not my proposal, and I don't want to progress until we've got the okay from the angler. So I'm sorry, in this instance, I would disagree with Councillor Deehan. So you had summarised my points quite accurately there, but I wouldn't be inclined to move forward until we've spoken
Okay,
to the
no
anglers,
problem.
and it's spoken to the Locks Agency as well, who were also against this proposal at the time.
Okay, just give me a moment, members. Let's take it just a way forward. Bear with me. Okay, I'll just invite the Chief Executive just to take us through this section to the conclusion there. So go ahead, Alison. Thank you.
Okay, so Chair, I think we have three proposals really that have been presented. Firstly, Councillor McAleer's proposal, which was seconded by Councillor O'Coffey, which was that we proceed with the recommendations with the exception, we essentially pause item 4 until the various assurances that Councillor McAleer has requested are obtained. We then had the proposals for the recommendations as proposed by Councillor Irvine, seconded by Councillor Deehan, and we then had a proposal by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Padraig Kelly, that we would proceed to convene, I suppose, a multiple stakeholder meeting with those with a specific interest in the hydro, particularly local anglers, to advise them of the scheme and to provide the necessary assurance and to take their views in relation to it. So really 3 separate proposals, Chair, I would think.
Okay, so we'll just take them in the order they were made then. So are we all agreed with Councillor McAleer's proposal?
Sorry, Chair, point of order here, or point of information. The proposal that I was seconding would incorporate Councillor Fitzgerald's proposal, because the Councillor Irvine did refer to the concerns expressed by the anglers and
Yes.
felt it was important to have those addressed. So the proposal that I was seconding would incorporate Councillor Fitzgerald's proposal as well, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, that's grand. That's grand. Okay, so taking Councillor McAleer's first then, so it came to us first. So are we all agreed?
No.
No.
Okay, members, I'll just run through the roll call here. So bear with me a second here. Okay, Councillor Armstrong.
Against.
Councillor Baird.
Against.
Councillor Blake.
Against.
Councillor Buchanan.
Against.
Councillor Campbell.
For.
Councillor Clark. Councillor Coyle.
Against.
Councillor Curry. There's an apology. Councillor Deehan.
Against.
Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly. Is Anne-Marie still there? She might be gone. Councillor Sean Donnelly.
For.
Thank you, Sean. Councillor Stephen Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Keith Elliott.
Against.
Councillor Deborah Erskine.
Against.
Councillor Feely.
For.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Avava, 4.
Councillor Gannon.
Sorry, Chair, you have to leave.
Grant, thank you. Councillor Garrity.
For, sorry, Chair, against.
Just clarify that again there, Mary.
Apologies, Chair, against.
Against. Okay, Councillor Green. Councillor Irvine.
Against.
Councillor Keenan. Apology, thank you. Councillor Catherine Kelly.
For, Chair.
Councillor Padraig Kelly.
For.
Councillor Tommy Maguire.
Survivor for.
Councillor Emmett McAleer.
For.
Councillor McCaffrey.
Lahai for.
Councillor McKeon, for. Councillor McCloughery.
Against?
Councillor McElduff.
Valver, for.
Councillor McPhillips. Yarv may be away. Councillor O'Coffey.
Person, for.
Councillor O'Reilly.
For.
Councillor Rainey. He's gone. Councillor Robinson.
Against.
Councillor Smith.
Against, Chair.
Councillor Benny Swift.
For.
Councillor Thompson.
Against?
Councillor Thornton.
Against.
Councillor Warrington.
Against.
And Councillor Wilson. He's gone. Okay, Alison, how did that work out for us? Okay, so that proposal has failed by 15 for to 16 against. So that means that Councillor Irvine's proposal is carried. Is that correct, Alison? Yeah. I'll just okay, just take it then. So that's Councillor Irvine's proposal is just to go with the recommendations as listed, with the addition to include Councillor Fitzgerald's comments about engaging with the. Yeah, perfect. Okay, with the fishing community. So take a roll call on that one, members, just to keep it clear. So Councillor Armstrong.
For.
Councillor Baird.
For.
Councillor Blake.
For.
Councillor Buchanan.
For.
Buchanan's for. Councillor Campbell. Just come back to you, Councillor Campbell. Councillor Clark. It's not here. Councillor Coyle.
For.
Councillor Curry. There's an apology, thank you. Councillor Deehan.
For.
Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly is absent. Councillor Sean Donnelly.
Chair, I think there's some uncertainty about the nature of this. Sorry to do this in the middle of it, but I think there might be some uncertainty as to what members are voting on in this case.
Okay, I'll just get this proposal clarified then. So, Alison, if you want to.
Really, Chair, it's just the recommendations as presented in the report, together with the inclusion of Councillor Fitzgerald's proposal for the meeting with the fishing stakeholders as part of that work. So I think it was just that you wanted to avoid any ambiguity, Chair, to get the vote.
That's it. So it's just basically to endorse the recommendations with the addition of engaging with the.
Yes.
Okay. So just, I suppose, just for that clarity, I'll go back to the start. Members, apologies. Just to keep it clear and accurate. So Councillor Armstrong.
For.
Councillor Baird.
For.
Councillor Blake.
For.
Councillor Buchanan.
For.
Councillor Campbell.
For.
Councillor Clark is not here. Councillor Coyle.
For.
Councillor Curry is an apology. Councillor Deehan.
For.
Councillor Anne-Marie Donnelly is not here. Councillor Sean Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Stephen Donnelly.
For.
Councillor Keith Elliott.
For.
Councillor Deborah Erskine.
For.
Councillor Feely.
For.
Councillor Fitzgerald.
Avaver, for.
Councillor Gannon. It's had a go, isn't that right, Mary?
Right, Chair, yeah.
And Councillor Garrity.
For, Chair.
Councillor Green is gone. Councillor Irvine.
For.
Councillor Keenan's an apology. Councillor Catherine Kelly.
For, Chair.
Councillor Padraig Kelly.
For.
Councillor Tommy Maguire.
Son the Malta, for.
Councillor Emmett McAleer.
Against.
Against. Councillor McCaffrey.
Lehigh and Malta, for.
Councillor McCann, for. Councillor McCloughery.
4.
Councillor Michael Duff,
Lahey, 4.
Councillor McPhillips. He's away. Councillor O'Coffey,
Against.
Councillor O'Reilly,
4.
Councillor Rainey is away. Councillor Robinson,
4.
Councillor Smith,
4, Chair.
Councillor Swift,
4.
Councillor Thompson,
4.
Councillor Thornton,
4.
Councillor Warrington,
4.
and Councillor Wilson is not here. So that's been carried, obviously, with a few against. So that deals with that item, members. So that takes us into correspondence. Now, right, item 7. 7.1 is dated 15th of April from Newry and Down District Council regarding their motion in relation to violence against women and girls strategy. So, Councillor McCloughy, is your hand up from before?
Sorry, Chair, taking it down now.
Yeah, and just bring in Alison maybe here just to...
Okay, Chair, just members will recall the Policy and Resources Committee did endorse the same motion from Antrim and Newton Abbey Council at its meeting last month. So we suggest
So this
it
is
be noted.
just for noting at the stage. Okay, so we spoke on this last month, members. Councillor Deehan, is this for noting?
Chair, that was just the clarification that I wanted to make that Alison has made. So I propose to note, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor McAleer, to second that?
Yeah, happy enough to second, Chair.
Thanks, Emmett. Okay, and then 7.2 then, so is other correspondence, there's a number of items, is there?
Yes, Chair, we've 5 items of other correspondence that have been uploaded to the folder. So the first item is from the Western Trust, and this is an update in terms of the recruitment and approaches that have been taken by the Trust regarding vacancies.
Councillor Deehan?
Sorry, Chair. Propose to note, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McAleer?
Yeah, Chair, happy enough to note, but I was just wondering, could we, in terms of writing the information noted in the letter, that I'm just wondering, it notes about the lack of accommodation near hospitals. I don't know if Councillor Deehan would be fit to advise, or if it would be an issue for the Department of Health of the Western Trust, but the old or the former nurses' home block, the block of flats at the Tyrone and Fermanagh Hospital, I'm just wondering if that would be a potential location for, well, provided it was updated and refurbished, but a potential to provide accommodation for healthcare workers. And maybe we could, or I would propose that we would write either to the Trust or the Department of Health to inquire if that would be a possibility going forward.
Okay, that's a proposal. Councillor Fitzgerald?
Yes, I know with the pandemic that those old nursing blocks over at the Tyrone Fermanagh Hospital has been in use, but they're very unsatisfactory accommodation. You could hear somebody making a cup of tea in the next door. There's not enough plugs. It's just everything is really bad. So I think that's maybe what enough response from the Trust seeking that there isn't very inadequate accommodation. I think they haven't went far enough. I know from chatting to nurses is that they have been very relaxed about giving nurses full-time jobs, and I'm getting this from other people. They say that it's a fact. I'm unaware that it is a fact, but that's all I'm going from nurses. They're very despondent, and what exactly is going on, they're getting contracts of every 6 months, and that's why people aren't sort of siding with the contracts, because they need permanent positions. So I'm happy enough with Councillor McAleer's. I'll second that proposal to write to the Trust.
Okay, thank you, Anne-Marie. Councillor O'Coffey?
It's okay, Chair. I was just going to second that. Thank you.
Okay, and Councillor Thompson?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Happy with the noting and also with Councillor McAleer's proposal. Thank you.
Thanks, Earl. So we're all agreed then, members, with that, yeah? Perfect. Alison, third one, is it, from BT?
Yes, that's correct, Chair. It's regarding the removal of a public payphone in Trillick, and the details are set out in the letter. And the mechanisms by which concerns can be raised. So in summary, Chair, that if the council wishes to express concern, we have a limited time to do so, and this has obviously been circulated more widely for members of the public.
Thank you. Councillor Garrity.
Thanks very much, Chair, and thanks, Alison, for just clarifying that there's mechanisms out there if there's any avenue people want to input into it. But just very briefly, as way of background for those that maybe are unaware, this has had to be repaired recently 3 times. The last time it was hit by a lorry, in which case it was so unsafe it had to be entirely removed. At the time of its removal, the local public in there was there when it's been removed. There was no money in the phone box. And I suppose it'd be very delicate in how I put this next phrase, but the phone box in recent years was no longer being used for what its intended purpose was. Therefore, I deem it, it is not fit for purpose. The local shops, the nearby pubs, the businesses, hairdressers, etc., have no interest in its retention and indeed engagement with the wider local community and indeed the community group. It had its time and its day, but we are not, we believe, losing a vital local service. All the children there in the morning at 8 o'clock in the village of Trillick from 11 years of age have all got phones. We're lucky in that we have a very good community, and that if someone did get in a compromised situation that they needed help, there's any number of doors in the village that you could knock and the phone would be provided if someone did find themselves in a situation that it was desperate, and that's on a 24/7 rota. So therefore, just I don't believe also that BT, even there was a desire, which there's not in the village, to replace it, that they're going to anyway. So on that note, Chair, I just propose that we note the correspondence. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Councillor Wilson.
Chair, yes. I'm sorry I've been off the air for 3/4 of an hour at least, and it's very annoying for everybody. But I have IT were out today twice, and it's still not in any way satisfactory. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bert, and it's good to hear you get in there, and that's been noted, I suppose, that IT have come out. And is there issues to be addressed with Councillor Wilson, is there? Or okay, sure, we heard you there, Bert, so hopefully that's been resolved. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, I think Councillor Garrity proposed the noting of that letter. I'll second that, Chair.
Thanks, Earl. And Councillor McAleer.
Yes, Chair, it's just in relation to the letter itself, and I had to contact Celine to thank her for providing me with an answer on it, but there doesn't seem to be an address or a location noted on it, and I realise now that other councillors have obviously spoken to Celine as well, but just for future reference, I was wondering, is there any way we can ensure that we're not just given a phone number, that we're actually given the location of the payphone that's being removed? Presumably this seems to be happening more and more often now, but just in future, if we're given the locations, it'll be very beneficial. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, we can certainly ask the question, but I suppose ultimately it's up to BT, I suppose, how they respond. But no, it's a fair enough point, Emmett, that you've made. Okay, members, that's that dealt with.
Chair,
next one's from
just an additional point. Chair, I wonder in our engagement with BT, could we check on whether or not there is a requirement on BT to enhance broadband to the nearest premises, or if a premises, for example, if there's a phone box attached to a premises, in a rural setting, and there are some of these, like post offices and things like that. Is there a requirement on the part of BT to boost or enhance the broadband to that location? So I'd propose, Chair, that we seek that information from BT, clarity around whether or not there's an onus on BT to enhance broadband. I know of at least one setting in the Omagh district where the broadband hasn't been enhanced or boosted, and there is a phone box there. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Feely, you're in to second that?
Yeah. Dead on second, Stephen.
And we all agreed? Yep. Okay. Alison, if you just take us to the next bit there.
Yes, so this is from the Department for the Economy, Chair. It was just following up on our correspondence confirming the Council's willingness to provide the facilities for the display of the mineral prospecting licence information, and we'd also been asked to clarify the current status of the Dalradian licence applications, and the Department has advised that those have not lapsed and that there's no statutory time frame in which to finalise the applications.
Councillor McAleer.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy enough to note it, but I feel just given the last line of the letter, and if we have any further queries, please don't hesitate to contact them. I feel we have to get back to Mr. Wilson because MPLA 1 and 2, formerly DG 1 and 2, actually expired on the 31st of December 2019. And it seems clear that Dalradian have currently no prospecting licenses for the Ruski, Greencastle, Creggan areas, which were previously covered by DG 1 and 2. Furthermore, that it has no licenses for it has had no licenses for the past 17 months and therefore should not be working in these areas. Obviously, this is a matter which is causing a lot of tension, annoyance, and grievance in my local area, as this company seems to be able to operate without either a license or planning permission. And I think it's worth noting that Dalradian actually applied for a renewal of these licenses on the 31st of July 2019. The DFE website states that mineral prospecting licenses take approximately 4 months to process. The letter from DFE says the department was not able to process them due to health restrictions, but the reality is there was no lockdown until March 2020, meaning that DFE actually had at least 7 months to process them. So I think we need to follow up in relation to that, Chair. So I would be proposing that we actually write back to get clarification on those matters.
Okay, Councillor Coffey, I presume you're seconding.
I think we definitely need to have clarification on this, and there's a lot of anomalies, as Councillor McAleer, so I'm happy to second that.
Thank you, Councillor Warrington.
Yeah, I was just going to say I'd be very surprised if a company of Dalradian Stanton would be doing any sort of operation or whatever illegally.
What Stanton is that?
So, okay, no, listen, through the chair, as you say, Emmett. So listen, that's that matter dealt with there. We've got an action out of that, so we're going to move on. Okay, Alison, is there any other correspondence?
Yes, Chair, 2 further items. Just for noting again, item 4 from the Minister of Education, and this is regarding the funding for Newton Butler Cross Community Playgroup, and just confirming the offer of award for the 2021-22 financial year.
Okay, Councillor O'Reilly.
Thank you, Chair. As somebody who was a former director of the play school, I'm just wanting to put on record very welcome to have the change of heart by the Minister and this funding allocated to not alone Newton Butler Cross Community Playgroup for the 2-year-old programme, but on many other playgroups as well. That said, Chair, I'm very gratefully received kids back in action at the 2-year-old programme and staff re-employed. The point I want to make here, Chair, is that while this is a 3-year initial provision, again, on this funding, I've been calling that this should be mainstreamed. And I wish to propose, Chair, that we would actually write back to the Minister and seek that this with the 2-year-old programme, the merits of it are not in question, that this would be a mainstreamed programme so that play schools are not in this situation waiting to see at the end of 3 years if they're going to be funded again and leaving parents, kids and staff in an unenviable position. So my proposal is that we would write back seeking if the Minister would consider to mainstream this 2-year-old programme. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Councillor Erskine.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I was delighted as well to see this announcement because I know it was something that the Education Minister was working on quite heavily to make sure that he could get extra funding to provide for Newton Butler and other play school provision as well across Northern Ireland. So it was very, very welcome news. And I know the First Minister met with Newton Butler as well on this very issue. So for the purpose.
Sorry, Deborah, we've lost you, I think, have we?
Hello, can you hear me?
Oh.
Can you hear me, Chair?
Loud and clear, Deborah. Loud and clear, Deborah.
The Chair's just having a difficulty just at the moment, members. No.
Can I go on?
You're muted,
Yeah.
Stephen.
I was just going to say if it needs a seconder, I'll second Councillor O'Reilly's proposal there, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, no problem. And again, apologies, Councillor Erskine, for that. That's seconded. That's grand. Councillor McAleer.
Chair, I suppose first off, just in Councillor Keenan's absence, I know this was something that he was working on, so would send my congratulations to him on his involvement in this, securing this another turnaround from the Education Minister. My concern is really around the language, and maybe it's been addressed by Councillor O'Reilly's proposal there, but whilst he states that there is additional funding coming, and that the requirements they've met, that the group in question have met the eligibility requirements to receive an award, it doesn't necessarily state that they've met the full award there. And again, it notes the 21-22 year award. So obviously anything we can do to extend that and fully fund them beyond that, I think has to be welcome. So perhaps that was addressed in Councillor O'Reilly's proposal, because it certainly doesn't seem to be covered in the correspondence. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Chair, just as a point of information for members, that this is the Play School have been informed that they not alone are getting it for the 21-22, but that it's a 3-year funded package here. So for the next 3 years. So my proposal, second by Deborah there, is that this would be continued as a mainstream, not on even a 3-year rolling programme. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks for that clarity, Thomas. Councillor Coffey.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. This obviously is a very welcome turnaround from one of the Stormont ministers, but it has to be said that the rationing of funding for this sector is having a dramatic impact on the provision of childcare, and that's causing a lot of problems for working parents, and in particular working mothers, who end up often having to take on the bulk of the raising of children. That's the reality of our society still. And I think what we need to see is a commitment to actually state provision of play groups. Why is the state not providing these facilities in our society? It's a fairly basic demand. The idea that parents of children should be free to leave their children to a high quality facility paid by the public taxes, run by the public purse, and democratically accountable. And I think that that's the sort of model we need to see, rather than this rationing where if you're lucky, you get to survive another 2 years. And if you're not, then your entire area ends up like Newtown Butler faced, which was a complete lack of places for parents. So I'm glad to see it, but I think we need to see drastic change from Stormont. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Alison, so that takes us on to correspondence in relation to the student roost, is that right?
Yes, Chair, that's correct. And that's the final item of correspondence. And Chair, as members will see, student roost have asked if we secure really a data release form from the student in question. I don't think that's something really that the council can reasonably do, Chair. I know this was raised by one of our members, and I would suggest that would maybe be progressed directly by the councillor in question, and I'd suggest this is just noted.
Okay, so can I take a proposal and second to note that, please? Councillor Erskine and Councillor Thompson.
Chair.
Sorry, Thomas, I thought your hand was left up there. Go ahead, apologies.
Just in anticipation, that's all. Certainly, I have no problem with what we have just said there. The related point, Chair, which is, and I know the student roost and all about the funding and paying the rent and all there is very, very important for those that are in it. The bigger picture, though, Chair, I think we have wrote to the universities looking about how they might intervene some way in the fees that were charged to the students all the time. I'm just wondering where in the system that is at the moment. I presume we have got no reply when we have no update.
I think that's it. Celine, do you want to just clarify? Yeah, or Alison, that's it.
Chair, that's exactly correct. The letters have all issued. There were a number of linked correspondence on this matter, and we haven't received the responses yet from the universities, Chair.
Appreciate that. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Thomas. Okay, members, so that's the correspondence dealt with. Alison, yeah. Happy days. Okay, so that takes us back then so to matters arising from the meeting of the 21st of April. I'll run through them page by page, but I would anticipate that most of the issues have been dealt with through the course of this meeting, I'd imagine. So if you want to come in, just shout out. I'm going to go through the paper on minute pad, so I just mightn't see the screen. So shout out if you want to come in. So page 1, page 2, 3, 4, 5. Councillor McElduff.
Chair, thank you. Chair, on page 4, there's a reference to in 4.4 Local Government Boundaries Commissioner. Isn't that right?
Correct, yep.
Okay, just I know there was a meeting today. I wasn't able to attend it, but is there any initial feedback from that meeting today? You know, what was the purpose of that meeting and what's next?
Chair, I wasn't at the meeting myself, but maybe if some of our members were, but the purpose of the meeting was it just followed on from the council's request to meet with the commissioner, and I understand the commissioner was setting out their programme.
Okay, we can probably get an update possibly from an officer who was attending. Would that be possible, Alison? Was anybody else there?
I can certainly follow that up.
We can chase that up, Barry.
Thank you. Thank you.
Councillor McAleer.
Yeah, Chair, it was actually in relation to an issue on page 2 there. Sorry, it wasn't on quick enough. Just
right, go ahead there. Yeah, go ahead.
Just very briefly on the issue of restraint and seclusion that we've talked about a number of times. Just really to welcome the Department of Education this week published interim guidance in relation to the use of restraint and seclusion for schools. And there's been a number of quite important acknowledgements in relating to that, not least that children should never be locked in a room or left unaccompanied, and must be able to leave when they want to, and that it does include, I suppose, what we've been campaigning for, involvement of parents and guidance as well. So really to recommend or to commend them on that, and also the department's review into issues of seclusion and including the deprivation of liberty. Really just to welcome those things. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Emmett. Councillor Maguire, Tommy.
Apologies, I did come in there in response to Barry, but I apologise now that it was in jest. I was coming in to let him know the result of the meeting this morning was that we have a problem with coterminosity, and I'll have the conversation with the member after the meeting if he wishes.
Yes,
Thank
no
you, Chair.
problem. Sound.
That sounds quite painful, Tommy. I wish you well. Councillor Thompson.
Yeah, very good, Chairman. I like Councillor Maguire's comment.
I'm here for the next hour, Councillor Thompson.
Oh, you're all right. It's no, I think they have done a presentation, so I'm assuming that can be emailed to all members. I think that's the way it was to be done anyway. But they basically give a timeline and next steps. But I'm not going to that because they've obviously done a presentation so that could be emailed to all members. Thank you, Chair.
That's grand. Thank you, Aaron. And Alison's nodding in agreement there, so that's no problem. Councillor O'Reilly.
Just to say that there was an email out from Heather from Democratic Services at 2:09 local government boundaries timetable and process for the review. So that email explains a bit about the timelines and so forth there as well.
Thanks, Thomas, for drawing our attention to that. Thank you. Councillor Thornton, looking in there.
Yes, Chair, just to sort of add to that, it was a very useful meeting, obviously the presentation, but it gave councillors an opportunity to spell out the difficulties that we have and obviously input that to the head of the organisation. And everything that's been said so far is exactly true, but at least we got the opportunity, especially in areas where wards have been done away with under the local government boundaries, but they're still retained by the UK Parliamentary. So it was a useful exercise. It's just to make a comment on it. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Howard. Okay, members, so that was up as far as page 2, and we dealt with page 3 and 4. So going on to page 5, page 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and page 17. Okay, so that deals with matters arising, members. So any other urgent and relevant business, section 8, I've been notified of one item. It's from Councillor Curry, but it's been referred to Councillor McAuliffe in her absence there. So go ahead, Barry.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I have it written down in my notes here, so I'll get to the point. Siobhan has asked me to convey, Councillor Curry, her concerns around how we deal with consultations. Now, she's coming at this very constructively, and essentially what she wants, and I would support her, is that perhaps presently our approach to consultations may be somewhat ad hoc. Sometimes we're notified of consultations through a letter or notification from a government department, the 9 government departments, I think it is, at Stormont or elsewhere, and other times consultations could possibly pass us by. So they might even pass us by, even if we receive a notification, if we're dealing with other urgent pressing issues at any given meeting. So Siobhan, Councillor Curry's request is that perhaps we could have an item on the agenda of P&R every month, or at least a listing every month, listing consultations, open or opening, which the council would have the opportunity to respond to as stakeholders and or statutory consultees. And this would allow time for consideration and some space for discussion to take initial soundings. And then I think she envisages that the committee home for this would be P&R, and we could take points raised to form the basis of a draft response in line with an agreed council position on an issue. And again, it's not intended to be burdensome or anything like that. It's not meant to add to the administrative burden, but it's about making sure we don't miss these kind of departmental consultations. And then on a secondary point relating to consultations maybe that emanate from the council itself, there is a suggestion that we could have a list with a short summary brought to P&R meetings of what consultations we as a council have open or opening, so that we have a ready reference and can disseminate that information out to the community to encourage them to take part. And there might be a benefit in this. They can come to P&R or R&C and be referred onwards, to the relevant committee. So those are constructive suggestions for improvement emanating from Councillor Curry, and I think she may have spoken to the Chief Executive about at least part of that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Barry. Just before we move on there, I see Councillor Campbell had declared interest there in relation to the student roost correspondence, so just make sure that's noted there. Okay, thank you, Barry. Councillor O'Coffey.
Yeah, Chair, just I think that makes a lot of sense, and at a minimum, I think that's I'd like to second that. Thank you.
Thanks, Donald. Councillor Baird.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I thought we had a procedure in hand whereby we were contacted about the words going out of my head.
Consultations.
Yes, it just wouldn't come. Maybe it's because it was knocked off earlier. But as to whether or not we responded or we didn't respond, and then council would accordingly take into account the response from councillors as to whether or not to go forward with these consultations.
Okay, I'll just get clarity now in a wee second. Councillor Baird will invite the other few speakers and then we'll come back to you. Councillor Deehan, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, well, that was the point that I just wanted to raise, that we do have a mechanism at present, my understanding. There are so many consultations in so many areas that it would be impossible for the council to respond corporately to all of them. But I feel that the standard of corporate response to consultations is very high. I know that Margaret McManus is just excellent in pulling all these reports together, which is a very demanding task, I have to say. But maybe just the Chief Executive would clarify on our current mechanism for deciding on which consultations to respond to. But I do think that Councillor Curry's proposal has merit in the sense that, I think it is important for councillors to be aware of live consultations to which they might want to respond in a personal capacity, if not corporately as a council. And also, I do think that in terms of our own consultations or public engagement events, it might just be good to be reminded of the live ones on a regular basis. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. I'll just bring in, sorry, Councillor Garrity's in there as well. Go ahead, Mary.
Thank you, Stephen. Thanks, Chair. Just to say, yeah, I think Siobhan's proposal through Barry has merit, certainly, but I do think it might be a mammoth task of work to really get through. I have no issue with it. I think there's somewhere in the middle where there could be a compromise between Siobhan and the officers and how this outworking is, and Councillor Deaton's proposal or suggestion here that we are all well made aware of these consultations to feed in through the officers perhaps, or through as personal councillors in their own personal capacity. I feel that it could be every single consultation would be too much, but if we are doing that in whatever way it goes forward, I'm happy to be notified and let's feed in. But it's the time frame. I am going to be a real stickler here. Business in general in this country is going slow because the consultation deadlines and that aren't met, and declaring interest in the planning. I notice things in the planning that can be sorted at our local level at times, and I think we have to be more, if there's a date in situ there, honour that date, let us know in good time what the consultation is or what it's about, give us time to feed in, whether it's to the officers or even as a council grouping like this at a meeting, but looking for extensions or not getting in time or delaying business, whether it's something we agree with or don't agree with, I think is bad practice. So that would be what I would like included in that proposal, is that whatever way we deem most efficient to bring it to the council, this merit of a proposal, it certainly is, that time frame is a very important factor in it, and that we meet it at all times. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, I see Margaret here's looking to come in and maybe can provide some clarity. So go ahead, Margaret. Go ahead then, Margaret, if you can hear us. Don't think we have her online, have we? Margaret, can you hear us okay, or? Yeah, she's Mike's live there. Maybe, Alison, if you want to comment there, maybe.
Okay, Chair. Yes, certainly. We do, a couple of members have referenced, we do have a matrix that we work through, Chair, and really the consultations which come, which are directly linked to the council's own responsibility, or those, for example, stroke services or others that we have particular interest in, we would report those, notify members, draft a response and bring to you for consideration. What I was going to suggest, Chair, is that I suppose Councillor McElduff's proposal goes beyond that. Perhaps I could suggest that we would bring forward a report next month on what our current procedures are. Certainly we don't include details of even the current council consultations as an aid memoir for members. I would be a little bit concerned that we are not always notified. We're notified certainly routinely by government consultations, but not necessarily of all consultations. So it would be with that caveat we could only provide information available to us. The other point that's been mentioned, Chair, has been around timescales. Within the New Decade New Approach, there was really a reduction from 12 weeks to 8 weeks, and maybe even in some of the earlier Stormont documents as well. More recently, where there have been time-pressing matters, including those relating to budgets, the consultations can be 2 to 3 weeks, so there may not actually be a committee cycle that would meet those reports. So I suppose what I'm saying in summary, Chair, if Councillor McElduff was content, we could certainly, I think, reflect the intent of that proposal, bring forward a report to next month's meeting setting out what our procedures are, suggesting how they could maybe be expanded upon, and also the details of the consultations that we would be undertaking as a council.
Barry, how does that work out?
Yeah, very good. Now, happy to be flexible here. I know Councillor Curry would too. You know, we've put down a wee request for it to be considered, you know, not hard and fast, but, you know, welcome any report back, you know, and give time to officers to work this up. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And I'll just check with Margaret again to see if she can comment or if she wishes to add anything to that. See, Margaret's just came off mute, but we still can't hear you, Margaret. No, it's not going to work. But I think that's that dealt with okay then. So, okay, thanks members for that. So that takes us into this part 2 then. So confidential matters. If I can get a proposer and seconder, please, to go into committee. I have Councillor Thompson and Councillor Ross. That's us. Okay, so just invite Celine to summarise the confidential business, please. Or sorry, Alison, apologies.
Okay.
Sorry.
That's fine,
Apologies.
Chair. No, thank you. Just to advise, while in committee, members considered the matters arising of our previous committee meeting held on the 21st of April, and there were no matters arising. And the Council also considered the report on confidential staff matters and agreed the recommendations as detailed in the report.
Can I get a proposer and seconder for that? Councillor Warrington and Councillor Thornton. Okay, so that deals with the meeting, members. That takes us to the end. Hope you all have a pleasant rest of your evening, and Master McCann, over and out.
Well done, McCann.
Good luck.
Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Stevie. Well done. Well
Good
done.
luck,
Good night, everyone.
Well done, Stevie.
Bye, Stevie.
Bye.
Done, Stevie.
Thanks, folks.
McCann.
All the best, Stevie.